I am 87 years old. Last Thursday evening, my daughter descended the creaking wooden stairs into the basement. She brought with her the scent of an expensive perfume, a fragrance so entirely out of place, so grotesque in this faintly musty air. She approached the armchair where I was sitting, slowly slid the book from my frail hands, and presumptuously dimmed my only reading lamp. She smiled, a flawless, manufactured smile. "Mom," she whispered, "your eyes are getting bad. Reading too much will only confuse you. Be a good girl and go to sleep early, my sweetie." My sweetie, she stroked my hair. That sickeningly sweet tone, laced with a nauseating pity, is not meant for a mother. It is the voice one uses to coax a toddler, or to soothe a blind, aging golden retriever waiting for the final peaceful injection at the vet's office. In the moment the light dimmed, he looked down at my liver-spotted hands, the translucent skin stretched over frail blue veins. A razor-sharp truth sliced through my eardrums. Ice cold in my daughter's eyes. I am already dead. This is not a room. This is an above-ground tomb. 6 months ago, under the guise of your safety and fear of you falling down the stairs, they erased every trace of my existence from the floors above. They banished me to this basement, where the only connection to the outside world is a ventilation window, barely the size of my two hands. In truth, they simply wanted to dispose of an unsightly burden. My son-in-law's dinner guests wouldn't have to endure the eyesore of a clumsy old woman spilling tea on their precious Persian rug. Every night, listening to their heavy footsteps, the booming laughter vibrating through the ceiling, I feel as though I am listening to dry dirt being shoveled onto my own coffin lid. The suffocation is absolute. They stuffed a humidifier in the corner, spewing out an industrial lavender scent to mask what they whisperingly call the old people smell. They bought me baggy, ash-gray sweatpants instead of the tailored silk dresses I used to wear, because these are easier for the caregiver to manage. They are throwing me a living funeral every single day. Little by little, with ruthless clinical care, they strip away my dignity, my agency, and my right to simply be an adult. All of it perfectly sugar-coated with the excuse of filial piety. But this suffocation didn't kill me. It slapped me awake in the thick darkness of this basement. While they assume I am sleepwalking through the fading memories of senility, something invisible, something ancient and fierce has begun to stir. They embalmed me while I was still breathing. But the children forgot one vital thing. It is in the absolute, crushing darkness that roots finally shatter their shells to grow. Every morning, long before the heavy footsteps begin their dreadful march, on the ceiling above, I perform a quiet, agonizing ritual. Before the cracked mirror, above the basement sink, the flickering fluorescent tube hums a depressing, sterile tune, casting a sickly pallor over a face I barely recognize. The skin is translucent parchment, mapped with a million microscopic ravines of grief, laughter, and exhaustion. My eyes, which my late husband used to say held the color of a stormy sea, are now ringed with the milky, unforgiving haze of time. I lift a hand to touch my cheek, and it trembles, a pathetic, involuntary flutter like a dying moth against a window pane. This is the costume I am forced to wear. This is the fleshy, decaying prison my daughter sees when she speaks to me in that nauseatingly slow cadence. She sees a crumbling ruins. But the woman looking out from behind those clouded lenses, she is not 87, she is 25. She is standing on the jagged, wind-whipped cliffs of a coastline she hasn't seen in 6 decades, her heart pounding with the reckless rhythm of youth, tasting the violent salt of the ocean on her lips. Her mind is a steel trap. Her desires are not for warm milk and comfortable slippers. They are a burning, ravenous ache for the horizon, for absolute, unapologetic freedom. This is the cruelest joke of aging, the existential agony they never warn you about. Your body slowly transforms into a museum of decay, but the curator trapped inside is still fiercely awake, banging her fists against the glass of the exhibits, screaming to be let out. Society looks at the wrinkled shell and assumes the soul has wrinkled along with it. They equate physical slowness with mental oblivion, It is a convenient lie they tell themselves, so they don't have to feel guilty about locking us away. Let them believe the lie. Let them look in this mirror and see only a frail shadow. Their blindness is my greatest weapon. While they think my mind is slipping into the fog, it is actually sharper than a scalpel, meticulously carving out a path through the dark. Inside this crumbling fortress, the queen is not dying. She is quietly forging a new crown from the iron of her own chains. My existence in this basement is dictated by an algorithmic precision that borders on the sadistic. 7:30 am, the heavy rhythmic thud of my daughter's heels on the ceiling, my daily reveille. 8-pounder am. A tray of lukewarm, unsalted oatmeal is carried down the stairs, devoid of the brown sugar I used to love, because sugar causes inflammation, Mom. 1-pounder p.m. The parade of colorful, mind-numbing pills presented in a little plastic cup. 8:00 p.m. The forced twilight as they switch off the main breaker to the basement to ensure I don't wander. They do not care for me. They manage me. I am inventory in a warehouse. I am a plant being watered on a schedule. Spontaneity, the erratic, beautiful essence of actually being alive, has been clinically eradicated from my days. But tucked away in the shadowy corner of my dusty bookshelf sits a relic they deem too worthless to throw away, an old, wooden-cased transistor radio. The dials are stiff, the antenna bent. It hasn't emitted a single note of music in a decade. My daughter views it as a harmless, nostalgic comfort object for a decaying mind. She pats it sometimes when she comes down to inspect my quarters. She has no idea that this dead piece of wood is my Trojan horse. 2 weeks ago, I slipped a crisp $100 bill, one of the few I had hidden in the lining of my winter coat, into the rough hands of Maria, the cleaning lady who comes twice a month. She has eyes that have seen true hardship. She understood the universal language of a caged animal. The following Tuesday, beneath a stack of freshly folded towels, she smuggled in the contraband, a cheap, thick, prepaid plastic cell phone. When the house above goes completely silent, I pry open the back panel of the dead radio. The little black phone feels heavy in my trembling, arthritic hands. It feels heavier than the diamond wedding ring I wore for 50 years. It is the intoxicating weight of treason. I dial a number I meticulously memorized from an old newspaper clipping, an independent estate lawyer in the city. Not the slick family attorney who plays golf with my son-in-law and reports my every move. Law offices of Sterling and Vance, a voice answers. I press the cheap plastic to my ear. When I speak, I strip away the frail, breathy tremor I use with my daughter. My voice is sharp, cold, and entirely lucid. Mr. Sterling, I whisper into the dark. My name is Eleanor. I need to know exactly how much of my joint trust fund I can liquidate by Friday without my daughter's signature, and I need you to set up a blind all-see. The stunned silence on the other end of the line is the most beautiful symphony I have heard in years. The seed has been planted. They manage my pulse, my pills, and my portions, but they cannot manage the quiet, lethal rebellion growing inside a dead radio. There is a distinct, terrifying power in being entirely underestimated. It is an armor forged from the ignorance of others. To execute a war when you have no physical strength, you must turn your enemy's greatest prejudice against them. My daughter's prejudice is her unwavering belief in my accelerating decay. So, I give her exactly what she expects. I have become the greatest actress of my generation, and my stage is this windowless, damp basement. When she descends the stairs to check on me, I make sure my gaze is slightly vacant, fixed on some invisible spot on the blank wall. I let my jaw go a little slack. Yesterday, I looked up at her with manufactured confusion and asked, in a trembling whisper, "Did your father come home from the firm yet?" My husband has been dead for 14 years. I watched the irritation flash across her face, quickly masked by that suffocating, pitying smile. She sighed, a heavy, performative sigh meant to broadcast the immense burden of her martyrdom. "No, it's Friday. Dad is gone, remember? Oh, you poor thing. Your mind is just slipping away like sand." She patted my cheek. thoroughly satisfied. Her superiority is my greatest shield, because as long as she believes my mind is unraveling, she will never look closely at the trash. She will never audit the mail Maria brings down, and she will never suspect the thick manila envelope tucked beneath my mattress. The documents arrived yesterday, smuggled in by Maria beneath a stack of freshly laundered bed sheets. They were from Mr. Sterling. The liquidation of my half of the joint accounts, the transfer of funds, the creation of a blind LC named Horizon Winds. When the house above grew quiet, I pulled the tray of cold, untouched, pureed carrots over my lap. Underneath it, I spread out the legal documents. The stark black ink of the contracts looked like a map to a new world. I picked up a pen. My arthritic knuckles screamed in protest, the joints swollen and stiff, refusing to bend gracefully. My hand shook violently, a pathetic physical betrayal. But I gripped the plastic barrel of the pen until my knuckles turned white. I forced my rebellious flesh to obey the iron will of my mind. Eleanor Margaret Vance. The signature was jagged, spidery, and frail. It looked like the handwriting of a dying woman, but it was the most lucid, lethal thing I have ever written. With every painful stroke of the pen, I was siphoning the lifeblood out of their inheritance. I was buying back my soul, dollar by dollar, right under their feet. I slid the signed papers back into the envelope and hid it beneath the empty tray, waiting for Maria's next shift. I wear my frailties like a cloak of invisibility. They think I am losing my mind, but I am just quietly unchaining it. Once a month, they bring me up from the crypt for Sunday dinner. It is less a family gathering and more a performative display of their own benevolence. A way for my daughter and her husband, Mark, to pat themselves on the back for not putting me in a state facility. The ascent up the basement stairs is agonizing. My knees grind, my breath hitches, and I play up the frailty leaning heavily on the handrail. By the time I reach the dining room, the sensory overload of natural light and the rich aroma of roasted meat is almost violently overwhelming. They seat me at the far end of the long mahogany table. Before I can even unfold my linen napkin, my daughter swoops in and fastens a silicone bib, yes, a bib around my neck. "Just in case of spills, Mom," she chirps, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Then the true suffocation begins. The conversation flows over me, around me, and through me, but never to me. I am a ghost haunting their perfect dining room, an antique piece of furniture that has lost its polish. "Did you see how she struggled with the stairs today, Mark?" My daughter says, her voice projected at that artificial, booming volume people reserve for the deaf and the dim-witted. She casually slices into a beautifully rare cut of prime ribicot. "I'm not allowed to eat because it's too tough to chew." "It's a blessing we moved her down there, Sarah," Mark replies, swirling a glass of the vintage Cabernet I purchased with my late husband in Napa Valley 30 years ago. "Imagine if she fell from the second floor, the hip replacement, the round-the-clock nursing." I couldn't live with the stress of it. It's for her own good. She's completely safe in the basement. I sit there, mechanically chewing the unseasoned, lukewarm mashed potatoes they scooped onto my plate, listening to them dissect my existence with the clinical detachment of mechanics discussing a totaled car. The smell of pity in the room is thicker than the gravy. It is a foul, cloying stench. Pity is the ultimate arrogance. When you pity someone, you strip them of their humanity. You reduce an entire lifetime of fierce triumphs, crushing griefs, and complex desires into a single, pathetic tragedy that you must manage. They look at my drooping shoulders and my vacant stare, congratulating themselves on their sacrifice. They have absolutely no idea that beneath this humiliating bib, my heart is beating with the quiet, terrifying rhythm of a ticking bomb. They do not know that the very house they are sitting in, the roof over their arrogant heads, is currently in the final stages of being liquidated by a trust they know nothing about. I swallow my bland potatoes, dab my mouth with my napkin, and offer them my most helpless, trembling smile. Let them choke on their pity. They feast on my perceived weakness, completely unaware that I am already digesting their ruin. The dead of night is my only sanctuary. when the heavy hum of the central air conditioning kicks on, masking the agonizing creak of my arthritic knees, I begin the delicate, thrilling work of a grave robber. I am stealing back my own life. Behind the hulking, rusting water heater in the far corner of my subterranean cell, there is a jagged, crumbling hole in the drywall. My daughter has never noticed it. She avoids that corner entirely because she is terrified of spiders. But for me, that dark, dusty, hollow space between the wooden studs has become a sacred vault. Inside it sits a faded canvas travel bag. It is small, but it holds the immense, crushing weight of my resurrection. I do not pack the hideous ash gray sweatpants or the sensible Velcro strap shoes they bought for me. I am not packing clothes. I am packing identity. I am packing the woman they tried to erase from the earth. Tonight, my trembling fingers clutch a small velvet box. Inside rests my diamond wedding ring. My daughter forced me to take it off 3 months ago, claiming my fingers had grown too thin and it would slip down the bathroom drain. She locked it in her digital safe upstairs for safekeeping. It took me 4 agonizing weeks of feigning sleep on the living room sofa to watch her punch in the code through my half-closed eyelids. The combination was her own birthday. How predictably arrogant. On my last Sunday dinner ascent, while she was distracted by a boiling pot in the kitchen, I slipped into the study like a shadow and reclaimed my history. I dropped the velvet box into the canvas bag. Next goes my passport. I trace my thumb over the gold foil lettering on the dark blue cover. It is my proof of existence. It is the undeniable legal documentation that I am not just Sarah's decrepit, basement-dwelling mother. I am a citizen of the world, a woman legally entitled to cross oceans and borders. Finally, I tuck in my leather-bound journal. The pages are not filled with the confused ramblings of a senile mind. They are filled with sharp, lucid observations of my captivity, the exact balance of my hidden trust fund, and the meticulous, step-by-step blueprints of my impending escape. Every item I drop into that bag feels like a desperate gasp of pure oxygen in the suffocating tomb. I zip it shut, the metallic sound sharp in the quiet basement, and push it deep into the dark cavity of the wall, carefully concealing it behind a loose piece of plasterboard. It is my lifeboat, fully provisioned in the dark, just waiting for the flood. I have become a smuggler in my own home, hoarding the stolen fragments of my soul in a canvas bag, waiting for the perfect night to set sail. The velvet noose finally tightened this afternoon. My daughter came down the stairs holding my old, worn checkbook, the one attached to the small decoy checking account I had deliberately left open for them to monitor. She sat on the edge of my bed, her face painted with that familiar grotesque mask of deep concern. "Mom," she began, her voice dripping with artificial honey, "I was balancing your checkbook, and I noticed you wrote the wrong year on your pharmacy check and your signature. It's getting so shaky, honey." I stared at her, perfectly maintaining my slack-jawed, vacant expression. The mistake had been entirely intentional, a prop in my grand performance of senility to keep her off the scent of my larger financial movements. But I had underestimated her greed. She reached out and patted my knee. "Mark and I have been talking. Managing this is just too much stress for your poor brain. We've arranged for a notary to come to the house tomorrow morning. You're just going to sign a little piece of paper giving me power of attorney. It will make everything so much easier for you, sweetie. You won't have to worry about a single thing ever again." Power of attorney. In the legal world, it is the final stroke of the eraser. It is civil death. It means I would no longer be a person in the eyes of the law. I would be property. A ward. If I signed that paper tomorrow morning, my secret LC, my trust fund, the coastal cottage waiting for me, all of it could be contested, frozen, or clawed back by a court deeming me incompetent. I looked at her perfectly manicured nails resting on my knee. I gave her a slow, trembling nod. "Whatever you think is best, Sarah," I whispered, letting a tear pool convincingly in the corner of my eye. "I'm just so tired." "I know, Mom. I know," she cooed, kissing my forehead before taking the checkbook and walking back upstairs, entirely satisfied that she had finally conquered the ruined kingdom of her mother. The moment the basement door clicked shut, the tears vanished. My mind snapped into absolute crystalline focus. The timeline had collapsed. There was no more waiting for the end of the month. There was no more perfecting the plan. It was tonight, or it was never. At midnight, when the rhythmic snoring of my son-in-law began to vibrate through the ceiling planks, I moved to the old radio. My arthritic hands did not shake this time. The adrenaline of survival is a powerful anesthetic. I pulled the cheap plastic phone from its wooden grave. I dialed a local private car service I had researched weeks ago. The dispatcher answered, sounding bored and exhausted. "I need a car at 2:15 a.m., I spoke quietly, my voice devoid of any tremor, cutting through the static like glass. "At the corner of Elm and Maple. Do not pull into the driveway. Cut the headlights when you turn the corner. I will be paying in cash. Tomorrow morning, she plans to legally bury me. She has no idea she will be standing over an empty grave. By 1:15 a.m., the house above me has settled into the absolute heavy silence of a tomb. The only sound in the basement is the frantic, erratic thumping of my own heart against my fragile ribs, and the cheap plastic wall clock ticking away the final moments of my captivity. I move with the agonizing slowness of a ghost. I retrieve the canvas bag from its hollow in the wall, the zipper cold against my trembling fingers. I sling the strap over my shoulder. It digs into my collarbone, a heavy, magnificent anchor of reality. Now comes the physical toll of rebellion. The ventilation window is high up on the concrete wall, a narrow rectangle of grime, caked glass meant only to let out the dampness. Below it sits the heavy oak armchair, my daughter relegated to the basement because it didn't match her minimalist decor. I grip the armrests. My breath comes in ragged, shallow gasps. To step up onto that seat requires the kind of brute, physical strength my 87-year-old joints abandoned decades ago. "You are not a crumbling ruin," I command my body. "You are 25, and the ocean is waiting." I force my right foot onto the cushion. A sickening pop echoes from my knee, followed by a blinding flash of hot pain that radiates up my thigh. I bite down on my bottom lip so hard I taste the metallic tang of copper. I pull myself up. I am standing, unsteady and swaying in the dark, my face level with the glass. The window latch is rusted shut, carelessly painted over by Mark 3 years ago. My gnarled, arthritic fingers claw at the metal. They slip, they bleed. The physical agony is immense, a fiery tearing in my shoulders and wrists. Yet I welcome it. For 6 months, I have been numbed, medicated, and swaddled in cotton wool. This pain is sharp, it is violent, and it is beautifully, undeniably mine. It is the pain of a creature tearing itself out of a trap. I wedge the metal handle of my hairbrush beneath the latch and push with the desperate, feral strength of a dying woman who has decided to live. With a loud, protesting crack that sounds like a gunshot in the silent room, the paint seal breaks. The window swings inward. Instantly, the stagnant, lavender-scented air of the basement is violently flushed out. A gust of raw, freezing night wind hits my face. It smells of wet asphalt, crushed pine needles, and the electric ozone of a distant storm. It is the most intoxicating breath I have taken in half a century. I close my eyes, letting the cold wind freeze the sweat on my forehead. The countdown is over. The oxygen has finally arrived. They believed my brittle bones were the bars of my cage. They forgot that a starving animal will gladly break its own bones to squeeze through the snare. The gap is impossibly narrow. I thrust my canvas bag through first, listening for the soft, muffled thud as it hits the damp earth outside. Then I pull myself up into the breach. The rough, unyielding concrete of the window still scrapes viciously against my ribs. It tears the thin fabric of my blouse and shreds my fragile, paper-thin skin. I can feel a warm, wet trickle of blood sliding down my stomach. I do not stop. I writhe, I twist, and I push with the frantic, graceless desperation of a creature violently tearing itself from the womb. I am shedding the decaying skin my daughter forced upon me. Gravity finally takes me. I tumble headfirst through the opening, crashing down into the wet, overgrown hydrangeas my daughter planted last spring. I land hard on my right shoulder. The impact sends a blinding, white-hot flash of agony radiating through my collarbone. For a terrifying, breathless minute, I just lie there in the mud, staring up at the starless, ink-black sky, gasping for air. I am out. Slowly, agonizingly, I drag myself to my feet. My knees are trembling so violently they threaten to buckle. My clothes are smeared with wet earth, and my hair is wildly disheveled, plastered to my forehead with cold sweat. I look back at the house just once. It looms in the darkness, a massive, silent monument to my planned erasure. Somewhere up there, perfectly comfortable in her plush king-size bed, my daughter is sleeping soundly, dreaming of the notary arriving in the morning. She is dreaming of her absolute legal ownership of my ghost. I turn my back on the tomb. I limp down the driveway, clinging to the shadows of the manicured hedges, my canvas bag clutched tightly to my chest. Every single step is a physical torment, but it is the triumphant, ecstatic agony of a victory march. At the corner of Elm and Maple, just beyond the glow of a flickering street lamp, a black sedan idles quietly. The headlights are cut exactly as I instructed. I reach out, my bloody fingers slipping once on the handle, before I pull open the heavy rear door and drag myself onto the cool leather seat. The driver, a middle-aged man with heavy, exhausted eyes, turns to look at me. He takes in my torn, blood-stained blouse, the mud smeared across my cheek, and my violently shaking hands. A sharp flicker of alarm crosses his face. He reaches for his radio. Ma'am, Jesus, are you all right? Do you need me to call an ambulance? Or the police? I meet his gaze in the rearview mirror. When I speak, I strip away the breathy, confused whisper of an 87-year-old ward. My voice is sharp, resonant, and dripping with an absolute, terrifying clarity. I have never been better in my entire life, I tell him. I reach into my canvas bag, pull out 3 crisp $100 bills, and drop them deliberately onto the center console. Take me to the international terminal and drive fast. I am done waiting. The engine revs. The headlights click on, slicing through the darkness. As the car accelerates away from the curb, leaving the house and my daughter's neatly planned future in the dust, I lean back against the headrest and close my eyes. I am no longer a crumbling artifact waiting to be cataloged. I am a fugitive of time, and the night belongs entirely to me. The sun did not simply rise this morning, it detonated over the horizon, painting the sky in violent, triumphant strokes of bruised purple and bleeding gold. I watched it from the passenger seat of a second cab, miles away from the airport, driving down a winding coastal highway. By 8:00 a.m., right about now. My daughter is probably walking down the basement stairs with a notary public in tow. She will be holding a pen and a legally binding cage, ready to strip away my final rights. Instead, she will find an empty armchair, a shattered window smeared with a little of my blood, and the cold, lingering draft of my absolute defiance. She will find out, very soon, that the accounts are drained, the trust is dissolved, and her mother is a ghost she can no longer manage. I step out of the car, my knees scream in protest. My shoulder aches with a dull, throbbing intensity from the fall, and the cold morning air bites fiercely at the scratches on my face. But as I stand on the wooden deck of the small, weather-beaten cottage I purchased under a blind see my cottage, my sanctuary, I feel nothing but a towering, monumental peace. I close my eyes and breathe in. The air does not smell of industrial lavender or the thick, suffocating stench of pity. It smells of raw salt, decaying seaweed, and the infinite, chaotic freedom of the open ocean. I am looking directly at the sea. I am 25 again, and I have finally arrived. If you are listening to this, if you are feeling the walls of your own life slowly closing in under the guise of someone else's care and concern, I need you to hear my voice. I need you to listen to the absolute, unvarnished truth from a woman who almost let herself be buried alive. Do not ever hand the keys of your existence to someone else. Not to your spouse, not to society, and most importantly, not to your children. They will tell you it is for your own safety. They will package their control as love. They will look at your gray hair and your slowing steps and decide that your story is over. that you are merely a fragile antique waiting to be dusted until you die. Do not let them write your final chapter. Do not let them turn you into a child. You have survived decades of heartbreak, joy, war, and peace. You have earned the right to steer your own ship, even if you steer it directly into the rocks. Be selfish. I beg of you, be entirely unapologetically selfish. Demand your favorite food. Spend the money you broke your back to earn. Leave the dishes in the sink. Take the trip. Break the window. Your life does not belong to the people who will inherit your furniture. It belongs to you, right up until the very last beat of your heart. I am 87 years old. I am bruised. I am bleeding, and I am entirely alone. But my God, I am finally terrifyingly alive. No,